Now we've got to talk about the pandemic. It's it's the elephant in the room. So I'm really keen, Harsha, to understand your thoughts in terms of the pandemic's role in the Great Resignation. I just want to pick your brains on that, if that's okay.
Absolutely. I mean, it is the topic du jour, as I like to say. Uh, yeah, I mean, look, there's definite churn in the marketplace. Call it the Great Resignation, call it what you will. I don't like the term Great Resignation because it means people the movement of talent is happening only one way. Because if these people are leaving, they're leaving to go somewhere else, obviously. So one person's loss is one company's loss is somebody else's gain ultimately. Um, but yes, there is definite churn in the marketplace. It's happening at a fairly alarming rate. I've not quite seen a market like this in my 20 plus year career. Um, and it's an interesting one. I don't think people are leaving necessarily because they're unhappy or because their companies are doing something wrong. I think people are leaving largely in part due to wanting to take control. The pandemic resulted in us losing control on our lives in many ways. At least I think of it that way. You couldn't do the things you were used to doing. Your children couldn't go to school. Such a normal, natural thing for them to do, and they lost control on it. You couldn't see your loved ones. Such a natural, normal human thing to want. You lost control on it. So I think the pandemic led to a bit of a loss of control on our lives. And I do believe these are my hypotheses. I have no data to back it up, to be quite honest. But I feel like when I have conversations with people, this is what comes up. A lot of times people leave because they want to take control of what's happening. It's a change, right? I also think the pandemic has forced people to rethink their lives and their work as well. And when you think about life, you think about your professional and your personal life. And the two are interrelated, as we discussed earlier. And I know of people, both people that work at MongoDB, personal acquaintances, friends, who've made significant career shifts as a result of the pandemic and having that, maybe all that free time to think about it. People who have taken the risk to start a new business, or people who have realized their vocation lays somewhere else, their calling, their purpose lays somewhere else. So a lot of these things have contributed to the resignation, this so-called Great Resignation. But I don't like the term resignation because I don't think it's a one-way street, right? People are leaving one company to join another, or they're leaving one opportunity to start a new one.
Should we call it the Great Migration? Is that a better term?
Maybe, maybe. That's a good one. I like that. It's definitely a migration of sorts taking place, and it's resulted in this churn in the marketplace that I often compare it a bit to the stock market. It's almost, people are starting to leave, and we don't really know which came first, chicken or egg, but people started getting these incredible offers. They started leaving, and as they started leaving and moving on to opportunities that potentially were financially more lucrative, it kind of raised the stakes on what the price of that job was. What's it going to take for me to hire that particular software engineer? And it sort of raising salary levels. I do think there was a ton of capital pumped into the private equity in particular in the last 12 months or so. I think it's likely to taper off now with everything that's happening, but the inflation and all of that, but and the macroeconomic uncertainty we're facing. But there was a lot of capital. So at MongoDB, for example, we definitely saw a lot of our employees go to private, smaller pre-IPO companies for offers that were just mind-boggling, to be quite honest with you, and monetarily. And it's hard to compete with that. And it does tend to drive the price up of that talent in the marketplace. And it's sort of like a stock market, like supply demand. And it's just created a lot of churn, people leaving, moving, and those people leaving, moving somewhere else. There's just movement. In some ways, it's healthy because I think in the pandemic, a lot of companies experienced extremely low levels of attrition. Some people, of course, had unfortunately lost their jobs in the pandemic. So if you set that aside for a moment, voluntary attrition, where someone's actually leaving the company on their own accord, not many people did that during the pandemic. So attrition did go down for many companies, particularly in the tech industry. And sometimes that, it's pent up demand. You see it all suddenly unleash when the world started opening up. People said, things are getting back to normal. The economy is doing well. I'm seeing all this money getting pumped into private equity. Maybe it's a time for me to make a change or to even explore what's out there. So, yeah, I mean, we've experienced our fair share of it, 100%. I think we've actually still done pretty well from an attrition perspective. Many of our people that have left for those kinds of jobs. We are a big target for companies to come at us. They know we have good talent here, and good talent is always in demand, no matter where they work. So we've definitely experienced it. I think it's in its last stages. That's my hypothesis, that we're going to start to see a tightening up of the market, talent market. I think largely driven by macroeconomic factors. That is going to, you're already starting to read about it, right? Layoffs, hiring freezes, things of that nature. I think that's going to start to slow down the so-called great resignation or migration, as we're now.